Today, I'm going to turn this 3-pound brisket flat into pastrami, one of my favorite things. So I started off with the brine, a very basic brine. The recipe I took from Matt Penman's Meat Church. He did a video about a year ago and on how to brine brisket and turn it into pastrami. So I started with a little brown sugar. As you see, some canning and pickling salt, McCormick's pickling spice, and probably the most important ingredient was the pink curing salt, not Himalayan salt. Apparently, this curing salt is what keeps your protein or meat from spoiling and developing any type of bacteria while it's sitting in the brine. I brined this 3-pound brisket flat for, I believe, 7 days. And on the 8th day, I removed it, rinsed it off, then placed it in water and let it sit there for about 30 minutes. I didn't measure. It may appear that I'm doing that, but basically I just kind of eyeballed this. In the video that I initially observed, Matt Penman did an entire brisket. And I recall they used about 2 or 3 tablespoons of the curing salt. Here, using a 3-pound brisket flat, I was certain a tablespoon of curing salt would be entirely too much. So I tried to use my own little judgment here, and as you see, I even put a little back and added a small amount on a gradual basis. Continue to let this come to a boil and then let it cool to room temperature. I removed the brisket flat from the packaging, rinsed it off, pat dried it, and got it into the brine. My main goal was to make sure everything was covered. I decided to use my smaller brining bucket as opposed to the large one. I didn't feel that the big one was, quite frankly, needed. As you see, this is actually not a bad looking 3-pound brisket flat. The marbling was actually pretty good for a flat. I purchased this, as I said, at Walmart, and this was individually cut and packaged, and it was the best of the options there at the time, based on that marbling that you can see right there. I covered the flat in the brine, and here I really wanted to make sure that I got all those pickling spice seasonings into the brine with the brisket. Of course, there was plenty of moisture, but I really wanted to get those spices and coriander and pepper and everything that came in that package in there with the brine. This thing sat in the brine, put in the refrigerator, and left it there for 7 days. I believe I put it in on September the 26th and took it out first week of October. So it had a pretty good amount of time. I definitely had concerns that it might be over-brined and over-salted, but in the end, it did not turn out that way. After 7 days, I removed it from the brine. Here I'm rinsing off all the pickling spices. I would say it was very surprised at how slimy it was. I'm sure the salt had something to do with that. So, as I said, I washed it off. My concern, once again, was any residual salt. So I did notice in other videos that a couple of guys had actually let theirs sit in cold water after rinsing for approximately 30 minutes. So I decided to do exactly the same thing. After sitting for 30 minutes or so, I took it out, patted it dry, placed it in this double heavy-duty aluminum foil, and basically just let it sit in the foil overnight until the next morning, which I took it out and seasoned it and prepared it to get put on the Traeger Pro 575. Now for the rub, I did grind my own black peppercorns and coriander seeds. I dropped them in a coffee seasoning grinder that I have. Actually, only the second time using it. I wanted to develop a bark if possible. So once again, I used Matt Pittman's basic recipe. I did add a little cayenne pepper to the seasoning. I wanted to add some garlic to it as well, but I completely forgot to do that. So it was just coriander, ground black pepper, and a little cayenne. I used some spicy brown mustard as seen here as a binder. Even though the brisket was pretty wet, I love the spicy brown mustard. And since I had planned on putting that on my Reuben later, I thought it would be a good addition in terms of using it as a binder to keep my homemade rub in place. I went pretty liberal here, as you can see. I didn't record me seasoning the underside or the fat side, but basically I really wanted to make sure I developed the bark. I know it's supposed to be pastrami, but it's brisket first. So I thought, okay, let's lay it on kind of thick. This is my first time, and if it doesn't work out, I can learn from the experience and come back and we'll try something else next time. Here it's seasoned up and ready to go. I put it on the Traeger Pro 575. I ran it at 250 degrees, and it took approximately 6.5 hours to reach an internal temperature of 170 degrees. But at that point, that's when I wrapped it in a combination of butcher paper and heavy-duty aluminum foil. I decided to go with the combination of butcher paper and foil. I really wanted to preserve that bark, so here I spritzed the paper. It was a combination of apple cider vinegar and water, wrapped it up in butcher paper. I wanted to make sure that I put it in here bark side up. And I guess you could say that this is a combination of butcher paper with a makeshift foil boat. I know people have done this many times. This is my first time actually doing it. And it worked out quite well. It did preserve the bark, and yet at the same time, the texture of the pastrami came out well. I knew that it wasn't going to be as tender as, say, a normal brisket cooked in my normal brisket process because of the density added by the brine, and it's not going to be, pull apart tender. However, it did turn out very well. I was very surprised, and I may even decide to cook a whole brisket using this method, not just the foil boat by itself, but making using this combination. I put it back on the Traeger at a temperature of 275. I increased from the 250, and I let it go until it reached a firm 205 degrees, at which time I pulled it and let it rest for an hour and a half. The butcher paper was really saturated with rendered fat, which really surprised me. Once again, this is a brisket flat. It had pretty decent marbling for a Walmart flat. However, it's still a flat, and I was just very surprised at how much fat had rendered into this butcher paper. As you can see here, my bark was still intact, and I was happy about that. It looked a little dry. I didn't spritz it a lot, but like I said, I think Matt Pittman described the enemy of bark is moisture. So here I'm trying to slice it. I tested it. It was actually pretty good. The pink curing salt did establish the pink color that you would see with pastrami. And it did taste like pastrami that I have tasted over the years. So Very happy, and I'm very glad that I kept that rendered fat on the bottom, because as you can see here, it is providing some moisture. So I sliced it up and basically prepared to put together my first or my version of a Reuben sandwich. Now, after slicing, I did put it in my Breville at about 125 degrees to keep it warm while I prepped my sandwich. And that may have been a mistake because I noticed that my bright pink color seemed to fade a little bit by the time I was ready to make my sandwich. However, it didn't affect the taste. Here, I'm checking for tenderness, and it definitely doesn't have that pull apart texture that you're looking for in a brisket. But as I said, for pastrami, it was actually exactly on point. So here I pull out my Pepperidge marble rye. I love this bread. It was soft. I then pulled out my version of I guess you could call it a Russian dressing. All it was a combination of Duke's mayo, spicy brown mustard, some ketchup, and some pickled jalapenos, which I've actually pickled myself, diced up. You might even be able to see some of the chunks in there as I lay the spread along the bread. I used Vlasic sauerkraut. I warmed that up in the microwave, and here I'm just adding my couple of pieces of Swiss cheese, which I also warmed up in the microwave. So here I'm about to put a couple of pieces of the pastrami on my sandwich, and I want to top it off with some spicy brown mustard and a nice little amount of sauerkraut. Um, I'm the only one in my home that likes sauerkraut. I'm also the only one in my home that likes pastrami. So the brisket size or the flat size is perfect for me because I don't really see the need in making an entire brisket through this method because no one else is going to eat it but me. So here I'm kind of prepping my sandwich, and frankly, guys, I was really looking forward to this because I don't do this very often, but I can guarantee you I will be doing this a lot more in the future. As a lover of sauerkraut and someone who's always looking to incorporate sauerkraut and look for dishes and recipes with it, this is definitely going to be something I'm going to do again. So here, I'm coating it with my sauerkraut, come along with a little bit more spicy brown mustard, and while topping it off. And this was actually my dinner for the evening. I know some people like to add a lot more meat, but I've definitely been on a health kick over the last 2 months. On a personal note, going from 280 pounds to 180 pounds over the last 24 months, not 2 months, I'm sorry, 2 years. So they're definitely not about to overeat, but this was my version of a Reuben sandwich, and believe me, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and this will definitely be a do again for me. Um, as you can see here, with me slicing, I went back and grabbed myself a small drink of bourbon and sat down and enjoyed my dinner. So once again, guys, I know I hadn't made a video in a while, but I really appreciate you watching, and hopefully we'll have another one up very soon. Thanks.